Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Bakersfield, San Jose, California, Buffalo, New York, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Donald Trump, if you see this right here, that's called covid.gov. He just revamped the website. Donald Trump's White House just revamped and they got all kind of stuff. And so I'm going to show you.
Blown away that this is a thing that you're showing me. I did not know about this.
This is real. And I tweeted out, I said the White House just updated covid.gov, and it accuses Fauci of lying and covering up the origin of COVID-19 virus, making up anti-science policies like social distancing, lockdowns, and masks. And of course, people doing their own research knew all of this 4 years ago, which is why we were censored, smeared, and slandered. The completely corrupt corporate media was also responsible and on the forefront of lying, pushing fake science, and slandering the doctors, scientists, and journalists who were telling the truth and exposing the lies. The thing that still blows my mind the most, and this really does, is that the people who do independent news shows, many of whom I know personally, completely went along with the lies, defended Big Pharma and the government's lies, and cowardly refused to use their own critical thinking skills, and still are gutless cowards afraid to cover the biggest story of their lives. I know these people personally, and they call themselves truth tellers, and they call themselves rebels and people who push back against the powerful, and they went along with fascism at the blink of an eye, and they still won't talk about it.
Yeah, well, these people are programmed to think fascism is not what it is, so that's how you get that. They don't have principles. They have the flavor that they got programmed into.
They just got afraid. They just got afraid. They got afraid of being ostracized, and so they cowered. They still do it, and they still won't look into it. Hey, if you do an independent news show and you still wear a mask, your independent news show is worth shit, and you're worth shit.
So I told you my friend that was visiting, this comic was, and he goes, he asked if I believed in God, and I said yes. I didn't say what I believe in any way. He goes, oh, you think there's a man in the sky? He really steel-manned my argument for me. And then he thinks Epstein killed himself and there was no lab leak.
Ha!
Wow.
So I go on to say the people in independent news, they push the lies, the slander of people like Joe Rogan, Dr. Robert Malone, RFK Jr., and me, with zeal and zero shame, and they will never atone or apologize. I, for one, will never forget and will continue to call for accountability and prosecutions, and I hope you do too. So let's look into, this is the new website. The true origins of COVID-19. This is what it says. If you go to covid.gov, and then it has right down there, it says the origin. And then it has the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. Data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research, gene-altering and organism supercharging at inadequate biosafety levels. That's what it now says at covid.org, covid.gov. Now, just because Wuhan is the home of China's SARS research lab, that doesn't mean that the bioweapon was created in China. That's racist.
Right. Probably in Raleigh.
It's probably Palestinians who did it, right? They created it.
It was probably the Islamicists.
So here I'm going to break it down for you. There's a little bit, and it also goes on to say the Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019, which was months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market.
The wet market.
Yeah, those markets were totally dry by the time this all came out. By nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of natural origin, it would have already surfaced. But it hasn't. So here they have this whole list of things. I'm going to go through them for you. Proximal origin publication. The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication that was in Nature magazine or Nature's website. And it was, Matt Orfala got a hold of the emails that showed that it was all rigged, that the scientists who first were sent there to discover where the virus came from, they all said it came from a lab. And then Fauci said, hey, I'm going to give you $8 or $9 million in research funds. And they all flipped. And they were like, oh, no, it came from a wet market. That, by the way, that article still not retracted by Nature magazine. Still up. And it's called The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated in nature. So they're saying Dr. Fauci pushed the lie. They're saying this now at covid.gov. The gain-of-function research, a lab-related incident involving gain-of-function research, is the most likely the origin of COVID-19. Current government mechanisms for overseeing this dangerous gain-of-function research are incomplete, severely convoluted, and lack global applicability. Do you remember when Dr. Fauci said to Rand Paul when he was tested, this is not gain-of-function, and you don't know what you're talking about? Well, that was Dr. Fauci lying to Congress, but he now has a blanket pardon. So he can't be prosecuted for that.
I, for one, am hurt that someone that looks that much like Pinocchio would turn out to be a liar.
And still people with YouTube shows who call themselves anti-establishment, independent media truth tellers won't talk about this. They're not going to talk about it because they're coward, gutless, and they threw away their critical thinking skills on purpose.
Well, a lot of them are on SSRIs that are made by these fine pharma companies that help you not feel the evil you do in this world.
They went from being the people who are supposed to be poking holes in the status quo and pointing out where big pharma and the government are criminally lying to you, to repeating the criminal lies and slandering anybody who looked into it. I personally was on the receiving end of that from people who have shows still on YouTube. Like the Young Turks, for instance. I'll just name one, the Young Turks. People with MSNBC contracts. Of course, what are you going to get? Except big pharma propaganda. Echo Health Alliance, Inc. I can't believe people after they were lied to repeatedly about everything from Russiagate to COVID to masks to the Wuhan virus to lockdowns to the vaccines to the Ukraine war to Joe Biden not being demented. They still go back to those same news organizations that lied about all those things, and they still go back to them for their news and information.
Who am I supposed to go to? Putin?
Right? So Echo Health, under the leadership of Dr. Peter Daszak, used the United States taxpayer dollars to facilitate dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China. After the select subcommittee released evidence of Echo Health violating the terms of its NIH grant, the United States Department of Health and Human Services, which is what RFK is in charge of now, back then, they commenced official department proceedings and suspended all funding to Echo Health. But new evidence also shows that the Department of Justice has opened an investigation into Echo Health's pandemic-era activities. Well, that's good. The NIH failures. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, friend of the show, is now he's in charge. A guy who got COVID right. A guy who was an author of the Great Barrington Declaration, which said you shouldn't do lockdowns. You should only vaccinate the vulnerable. And he was slandered. He was immediately slandered by The Atlantic and all the mainstream news media. Now he's the head of the NIH.
Wait, The Atlantic, the reliable widow jobs publication,
yeah.
Friend of Elaine?
NIH's procedures for funding and overseeing potentially dangerous research are deficient, unreliable, and pose a serious threat to both public health and national security. Further, the NIH fostered an environment that promoted evading federal record-keeping laws, as seen through the actions of Dr. David Morans and the FOIA lady, Marge Moore. So that was Fauci's number one assistant, and that was another lady at the NIH who was called the FOIA lady, Marge Moore, who showed people how to evade federal FOIA requests.
That nickname's great. It sounds like you'd see her at like Foxwoods Casino. The FOIA lady.
The FOIA lady.
She's like...
And here we see Anthony Fauci checking his breath before he drops to his knees to give Satan a blowjob. And thanks for a pardon. This is all up at covid.gov now. This is up too. It says a full and unconditional pardon for any offenses against the United States which may have committed or taken part in from January 1st, 2014. That's what the pardon of Anthony Fauci says. They now the Trump administration has put this up with this picture at
Wait, that's just legal argle-bargle, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Remember the Rachel?
Yeah. So the Department of HHS, Health and Human Services, obstruction. Again, now RFK's in charge of this agency. The Biden administration's HHS engaged in multi-year campaign of delay, confusion, and non-responsiveness in an attempt to obstruct the subcommittee's investigation and hide evidence that could incriminate or embarrass senior public health officials. It appears that HHS even intentionally under-resourced its component that responds to legislative oversight requests. So again, all the people who are screaming about Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore and Dr. Robert Malone and anybody else who was actually telling the truth, they're not going to be screaming about that they were lied to by their government about it. They're not going to be screaming that they were lied to by Big Pharma. They're not going to be screaming that they were lied to by corporate media. They're just going to try to ignore it.
Because to be mad about it is fascism, Jimmy.
Echo Health Alliance obstruction. Echo Health President Dr. Peter Daszak obstructed the select subcommittee's investigation by providing publicly available information, instructing his staff to reduce the scope and pace of production and doctoring documents before releasing them to the public. Further, Dr. Daszak provided false statements to Congress. But those people who hate me, hate Joe Rogan, are never going to be upset at the people in actual power who lied to them about everything that had to do with COVID. They lied about the virus, that they funded the creation of it. They created the virus. Joe Rogan didn't create it. Fauci, the people who they worship, created the virus. That led to lockdowns, which had no science behind them. That led to mask mandates, which had no science behind them. Which led to vaccine mandates, which also had anti-science behind them. New York obstruction. Now, this is all up at covid.gov. New York's executive chamber, held presently by Governor Kathy Hochul, redacted documents, offered numerous illegitimate privilege claims, and withheld thousands of documents without an apparent legal basis to obstruct the select subcommittee's investigation into former Governor Cuomo's pandemic-era failures.
He's running for mayor of New York or something.
He's running for office again.
And he's running for mayor.
He's got the experience, Jimmy.
The World Health Organization, the WHO's response to the COVID-19 pandemic was an abject failure. because it caved to pressure from the Chinese Communist Party and placed China's political interests ahead of its international duties. Further, the WHO's newest effort to solve the problems exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic via the Pandemic Treaty may harm the United States. You think? That's one
was
great
it the CCP? Not Bill Gates.
I think it was Bill Gates.
It was the CCP.
Yeah. Thank God Trump, one of the first thing he did was withdraw the United States from the WHO.
That is good.
That is good.
I hate that they go, because I'm sure the CCP is part of it, but Fauci's part of it. A bunch of people that aren't Chinese are part of this.
Bill Gates.
They're in league with it.
That's right.
So I hate that.
Just quit trying to blame China.
Rat them out. Yeah.
So social distancing. The 6 feet apart social distancing recommendation, which shut down schools and small businesses across the country, was arbitrary, and it wasn't based on science. During closed-door testimony, Dr. Fauci testified that the guidance just sort of appeared. I showed you that video. Just sort of appeared. Wasn't based on science. Mask mandates. There was no conclusive evidence that masks effectively protected Americans from COVID-19. In fact, all the evidence went the other way. Public health officials flip-flopped on the efficiency of masks without providing American scientific data, causing a massive uptick in public distrust.
Oh, I thought Putin did that.
Lockdowns. Prolonged lockdowns caused immeasurable harm to not only the American economy, but also to the mental and physical health of Americans, with a particularly negative effect on younger citizens. Rather than prioritizing the protection of most vulnerable populations, federal and state government policies forced millions of Americans to forego crucial elements of healthy and financially sound life. Oh, like when they put sand in skate parks and they were arresting people surfing.
Yeah. That's a great podcast topic for the next Gavin Newsom show.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, it's Governor Newsom. Hey.
But hey.
Hey. The Newsom shake I do.
The Newsom shimmy. Hey, you're just not looking at the upsides of lockdowns, Kurt. Now millions of people think they are master chefs and can do their own plumbing. That would have never happened. That would have never happened if they were allowed to go outdoors.
There's a lot more lockpicking lawyers than there were before. That's true.
That's true. The New York pandemic failures. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's March 25th order, which forced nursing homes to accept COVID-19 positive patients, was medical malpractice. Evidence shows that Mr. Cuomo and his administration worked to cover up the tragic aftermath of their policy decisions in an apparent effort to shield themselves from accountability. You remember Hollywood gave Andrew Cuomo an Emmy for his performance during COVID? And I guess because he was acting, because he was lying, and he was doing the. But then they took it away, not because he was lying and he was wrong about COVID and he did a policy that killed people, but because he got caught doing grab ass.
Same way they did Dr. Cosby.
Here it is. Here's how it appears on the website. They have this picture of Andrew Cuomo with a mask in his hand. Evidence suggests Mr. Cuomo knowingly and willingly made false statements to the select subcommittee on numerous occasions about material aspects of New York's COVID-19 nursing home disaster and the ensuing cover-up. The select subcommittee referred Mr. Cuomo to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. It never happened.
Yeah.
Well, now let's see what Pam Bondi's going to do.
I mean, this is a cool website, but I love how so far everything's on the verge of something big happening.
But nothing's going to happen
Yet, I got high hopes.
Yeah. And this is the final slide. The COVID-19 misinformation. Public health officials often misled the American people through conflicting messaging, knee-jerk reactions, and lack of transparency. Most egregiously, the federal government demonized alternative treatments like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, vitamin D, steroids, and disfavored narratives such as the lab leak theory in a shameful effort to coerce and control the American people's health decisions. When those efforts failed, the Biden administration resorted to outright censorship, coercing and colluding with the world's largest social media companies to censor all COVID-19 related dissent. And again, all the people I know in independent news are too big of gutless cowards to actually even talk about it. They just pretend it didn't happen. And they pretended it wasn't happening while it was happening.
Well, Kim Iverson did. She got fired off the Hill.
Right. So there was Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
There was this show. And Kim Iverson.
Russell Brand said it.
Who?
Russell Brand.
Oh, and Russell Brand. That's right. Russell Brand.
Look for that.
And look what happened to Russell Brand. Can you think of another show that bothered to cover this stuff? I can't. I can't think of another show. And this all comes from the House Oversight Report from December 4th, 2024. And that's now when you go to covid.gov, that's what you see, what I just showed you. So good on Trump for doing that.
I know. It's very strange to see a thing I like after a thing I don't like so quickly.
Yep, isn't it? So it's a mixed bag with the Trump administration. Mixed bag.
Oh, Redacted said it.
We're at, Redacted? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Redacted. Oh, Tucker Carlson, but he was still on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the one guy in the corporate media telling the truth. So good on Redacted, good on Tucker Carlson. You know what? I know Max Blumenthal also.
Yeah.
I'll give it to Max Blumenthal.
They put up a good Bukele report on Gray Zone yesterday. It's very good.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You know how it seemed pretty cool at first? It might not be that cool.
It turns out he's not as cool as you think. Turns out
it turns out once you get absolute power, they've renewed their emergency powers that he's using 27 times.
Yeah.
It's not a good sign.
And what Bukele would tell you is like, well, we went from the most dangerous country in the world to the safest. Yeah, but at what price?
You're going to go to Fire Fest in a minute, buddy, because there's such a crypto country that I think the money that he, when they promised the money's going to roll in, I think the money might be because they're a spare Guantanamo now. And I think that's my guess from what I watch at Max's thing. I haven't finished it, but I'll bet you whatever bonus they're getting for taking prisoners from America, he's going to need that to prop up whatever the hell he's doing with his, And then meanwhile, Malay just pumped and dumped a crypto coin to everybody. To people in America. I know. He just hawked to it America, by the way. People invested in his dumb coin.
That's the Argentinian president.
Yeah, he's a Chabad convert.
Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Bakersfield, San Jose, California, Buffalo, New York, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.